one of the most interesting things about these AI assistants is I think Google search has your intent in some ways and Facebook had your identity. With these AI assistants, they have both intent and identity.
Hello, fellow data nerds. My guest today is Gokul Rajaram. Gokul led product teams at Google, Facebook, Square, DoorDash. He was the creator of Google AdSense. He helped scale the Facebook ad platform, led Caviar and merchant products at DoorDash through its IPO. And he currently serves on a number of boards, including Coinbase, Pinterest, The Trade Desk. And earlier this year, he launched a venture capital firm called Marathon Management Partners. Gokul, welcome to World of DaaS.
Auren, thanks for having me. It's so exciting to be here.
I'm really excited. Now, you're kind of like part of building two of the biggest ad platforms, Google AdSense and then Facebook ads. Like, what are some of like the core principles that translate into these different advertising models?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I've seen now over the last 20 plus years, a bunch of ad platforms, been closely involved with two of them, and then with Pinterest and Trade Desk seeing different kinds of ads. I think one thing I've learned is that to be successful, an ad platform has to balance both user value and advertiser value. This means that your metrics, your leading indicators of success can't just be advertiser focused. They also have to include user focus. And I think one of the most interesting things there is how you select which ads to show, which is targeting, and like running the auction and that. But also, where do you show these ads? How do you make sure that you're not overwhelming a piece of content with ads? So where you place ads placement, campaign goals that you want to serve. For example, if you started serving in search, if you started serving ads that are not relevant to your search, but relevant to your identity, it would look very, very incongruous and probably would not be interesting. Yep. And then similarly, the ad format also matters a lot. Obviously, the powerful thing about, again, search ads was the fact that the ad format looks exactly very, very similar to the SEO ad format or the organic ad format. So everything, all of those things together, targeting, campaign creation, campaign goals, inventory, ad format, all of them have to be consistent and really in keeping with what the broader platform is trying to achieve. So Facebook's ad system, good example. The initial ad system of Facebook when I started at Facebook was actually very much like Google Ads. In fact, I think some engineers had just taken Google Ads, they read some papers and just copied Google Ads. So you could enter keywords and you would basically just bid on keywords.
Yeah.
And what is crazy is that it doesn't make sense. Why? Because in Google, when you bid on the keyword accountant, what do you get? You get people who are searching for accountants, right? And so your ad shows. But in Facebook, when you bid on a keyword accountant, there's no search context. You are actually targeting accountants. So we, even at Facebook, before I joined, we had built a system to take your Google campaigns and port them over to Facebook with one click. But of course, that doesn't make sense because you take the keywords in Google and the same creative.
Yeah.
And it does.
So, you're not searching for, it's just not the same user experience.
Exactly.
There. Yeah.
And so we had to rebuild everything from ground up, looking at Facebook's unique value, the context, everything had to be changed. And so that was the real lesson. You can never copy what works because what works in their platform, their context will not work in yours.
And part of and really what you're just saying, it's like, this is content that the user wants to see. And the reason why the Google ads are so powerful is they're actually things that I want to click on because they're relevant to what I want at that moment. Correct. And a lot of those Instagram ads are actually things that I'm excited about. I can't tell you how many shirts I've bought or hats I've bought or something from random Instagram ads. Now, maybe because I'm just like doom scrolling while I'm bored on a conference call or something. And it's more exciting than that. But it works. It works.
It works. Exactly.
Why? But it still seems that content recommendations are still not there. Like when I get content recommendations, even on Netflix or Amazon, which have so much data about me, they're often pretty subpar. Yeah. I don't get good movies. I don't even get good music on Spotify anymore that I really want to listen to. Why is it so hard?
I think part of it is because in the past, till recently, systems have not been able to preserve context on everything you've done. But now with embeddings and generative AI, this is why if you look at the Facebook revenue growth, it's been so dramatic this past quarter, because from all that I hear, a lot of the innovations in Gen AI, all the stuff that Llama, etc., but even using third-party models, Facebook has really dramatically transformed both the advertising
So
platform. They're
it's
able
not just like an old collaborative filter or something. It's actually like about like it's
It's
very,
looking at
very based on what
everything
I'm
you've
interested
done,
in
and so
right
you can
now.
maintain context of 1 million tokens per user, and you can see everything they've done and be able to choose much, much,
Well,
much
they're
better.
maintaining 1 million
No, I
tokens
don't know
per
if
user.
they're maintaining 1 million or not, but
Okay,
I
but
think you
that
can
would be
obviously with the new
amazing. Yeah,
models, you can
yeah.
do up to 1 million. I have no idea how many they're maintaining, but essentially their ability to show content, both organic and ads, has dramatically improved. And I think this is going to be the case across all platforms. I think every content platform that's not using Gen AI and deep learning and basically reinforcement learning is going to be falling behind. They're going to, so they have to be. This is the reason, and this is why I think Facebook is able to make this kind of capex investment, because I think there is a massive path forward for advertising that I think the acceleration they'll
But
see in the next
Amazon,
few quarters.
Amazon, Spotify, and Netflix, I mean, these are all smart companies with super smart engineers that have massive capital up, they can do lots of investments. But I think their recommendations still completely suck. Like, why have they not somehow moved to what Facebook is doing?
Because I think you need to, I don't think you can just use off the shelf models at that scale. You've got to have people who
Yep.
basically are inside your company who are doing research. So I think a lot of the FAIR, Facebook Artificial Intelligence Research stuff, fair labs, that stuff has been applied. So I don't think they built native Gen AI capabilities the way Zuck and Facebook invested in it over the last few years. And so I think they are building it now, but I think they are a little bit behind, but hopefully they will also invest. But I don't think you can just use for that scale a Netflix or an Amazon. I don't think you can just use OpenAI or Cloud off the shelf. I think you need another layer at the very least, because you have so much data. You have so much data. You've got to figure out what the right token size is, what the right token window, what the right embeddings are. It is much beyond what a normal AI company would use. It's a
And
different
why,
beast.
like, the other thing I've been wanting is like, to me, part of this thing is like personalizing the product. And like when I listen to a song, like, like the DJ Khaled shout out in the song, I would love them to shout out me and my friends in the song, right? I'm listening to it if I'm like working out, like that would really pump me up. If there's like, if I'm watching like a superhero show on Netflix, like seeing me and my family like walk by as extras, when the meteor is coming, like that would be really exciting. That would get me engaged. Like that's so easy to do. Like, why is the personalization not happening?
I think again, this all the things we talked about were text stuff around recommendations. Now we're talking about injecting video and making it seamless. We're talking about audio models, all of these things. So I think it's going to happen. The thing you mentioned, the scenario is pretty incredible. But I think in the next 5 years, these kinds of situations are going to be commonplace. And if they don't do it, they're going to be
Someone
risking
will do it for sure.
someone
Yeah.
else doing it.
Yeah. Now, if you were now like advising OpenAI on how to do ads, and obviously they have to think about it completely differently in this kind of chat interface on ChatGPT or Perplexity or whatever, like how would you help them design a system?
Good news is they have a lot of great people
Yeah.
who've joined recently, leaders who are going to design it. But one of the most interesting things about these AI assistants is, I think Google search has your intent in some ways, and Facebook had your identity. With these AI assistants, they have both intent and identity. And
Yeah.
so it's pretty amazing because on one side, people are using them as ways to find, for commercial queries, to find recommendations for commercial content. For those, it's a pretty straightforward thing to actually add useful ads in addition to commercial recommendations, just like Google Search has done. So that set of queries, you can do that. And for the rest of the queries, or the rest of your engagement with these apps, you basically have their identity. Because as you know, many people have done this experiment. If you or I were to enter into ChatGPT or Claude, tell me, draw a picture of me based on all you know about me, it is going to draw a pretty
It's pretty cool.
representative
Yeah,
picture,
I've done
right?
it.
Right.
Super cool. Yeah.
They know as much about us as maybe a Facebook or someone, because they've inferred it from all the things we've done. So, given that, shoot, you have identity. And most of Facebook ads are based on identity, on your implicit uh, associations with organizations,
Yeah.
with loyalty programs, with restaurants, etc. So, you have that set of ads you can show. I think the big question for these assistants for these kinds of ads is going to be where to show them. And I
Yeah.
think how to introduce them into the experience. I know some of the larger AI apps have been experimenting, and a bunch of them have pinged me over the last few months, and we've discussed different things. I think you start out, Gmail was a great example. I think Gmail, because I was involved a little bit in helping them think through advertising on Gmail. And there is actually I don't know if you've ever clicked on an ad in Gmail, but Gmail actually does quite well in advertising.
I didn't
And the
even
reason
know.
they do well,
I thought they did it, and then they kind of they took the ads off or something. I don't know if I've ever even seen an ad in Gmail.
it's because they rotate content into, at least back then, I think last 5 years, I myself am not sure, but till about 5 years ago, they rotated content and ads into the same slot. In other words, it's very important to make sure people don't get ad blind. If people realize that a certain slot is always going to be for ads, you basically start ignoring that.
Yeah, you ignore it.
And so
Yeah.
it's very important to start showing useful content 80% of the time or 50% of the time, and the remaining 50% show ads. So I think this is going to be very important.
X does that too. So they'll have like, here's the people you should follow. And some of those people are sponsored, but some of those people are actually
Exactly.
algorithmically like the people you should
Exactly.
follow.
So I think that's a best practice where you have to interleave content and ads in the same spot. And that's what I think web publishers didn't do well, where they would always put a banner ad on the right, and none of us can ever remember back in the day, right, what the hell that banner ad said, because it was, we all got ad blind quickly. So the key is to not get ad blind and prevent it from exactly what you said, interleaving content and ads in the same slot. Never have a slot be, never have a notion of a slot, in fact, an ad slot. Every slot can have some content and some ads. You just don't know when, and it's determined by the algorithm or the AI. But that's the most important thing, to make sure there's no like ad spots. Everything is, that's why in Facebook, I think the beautiful thing is, as you're scrolling, you don't never know whether an ad is going. It's not like every
Yeah,
five
it's just part of
pieces
the
of
feed.
content.
Yeah.
It's a
The
smart feed.
thing what I like about Facebook, is that the ads are good, and it's actually real. It's content that I want to. It's actually just content that I want to see. It just happens to be paid content, but it's content I want to see. In on X or Twitter, like I upgraded to not see the ads. You can pay X dollars a year to not see the ads, and the main reason I did that is because the ads were terrible. So I just never saw an ad that I wanted to see. So I just decided I would pay to not see them. But I would happily want to see ads if they were good.
And look at what Google did. I was just looking at Gmail to refresh what they did. Of course, what they've done is they put ads as emails. Their ads are actually just tagged sponsored and are,
okay.
they're actually, it's the ultimate blending of
The
ads and
ultimate, like
content
that would be
together.
great. Right. Exactly. If they show me an email that they know I want to see, like that would be good. As long as I actually want to see it. Like,
exactly.
Is it spam or is it content? Right. This is always the debate.
And that one absolutely uses, I'm sure, Google search results and so on. So it truly knows a lot of stuff about me and is able to surface really interesting offers for me and ads for me as email content. So that's a good example. I actually think the right ads in Gmail should be email offers, and that's what it is.
The problem is, I think at some point, so I think actually in Netflix, really they're mainly just promoting their own shows, right? And so that's essentially an ad, right? So they're always promoting their own shows, and I think they've gotten to a point where they only promote their own shows, and it's just not good for the user anymore. So they think of it like that ad there. But I think the number one Gokul rule that you had is you have to do what's in the best interest of the consumer.
Exactly. You have to have the reality is, every ad system in history, from eBay's sponsored ads to Facebook, the reality is, once you start injecting ads into a purely organic setup, engagement will degrade. It's an axiom almost. And so the only question is, how much do you want it to degrade? And so Mark Zuckerberg used to have an engagement budget every year as to how much engagement degradation he was willing to permit. And so the ads team and the newsfeed team had to really stay within that budget. So I think that every company should be measuring, and probably is measuring through holdout groups and so on. So you have holdout groups of people who never see any ads. And so you understand people who see ads versus that holdout group, what the engagement degradation is. And then you want to hold that degradation to a certain amount per year. But then you do other engagement enhancing things on the organic side to counterbalance that. And so you're always have this tension between advertising and organic. And it's a good tension to have. You need ads to monetize and grow the business. but you also need the organic side, the content recommendations to get better and better.
World of DaaS isn't just a podcast. World of DaaS membership is a private, invite-only community for founders and executives of important data and AI businesses. It's a place for off-the-record, high-trust conversations focused on the biggest questions data leaders are facing. The community is about peer learning, curated intros, and access to private events. Everyone in the group is building or leading something meaningful in data. If that sounds like you, apply to join at worldofdaas.com. That's worldofdaas.com. Now, if I'm an ad buyer and I want to buy ads, if you think of things like X, Netflix, and Spotify, in those platforms, the richest people opt out of ads. Right, they can afford the premium version of Spotify, the premium version of Netflix, the premium version of Hulu or whatever, and then they don't actually see the ads. And as an advertiser, like I might want to advertise to the richest people. So the amount of opportunities to advertise to these very wealthy people has gone down. What would be your advice to the advertiser?
I think the interesting thing is, even though people want to advertise the richest people, the reality is there's not that many of them. So most people do want to hit the mid-market and below.
If you're Coca-Cola or something. Yeah,
exactly. So I think it's probably a smaller set of advertisers who care. And I bet that even for the premium tiers, there will be ads introduced back again if they're not today. Because the creep of, if there's one thing I realized is every company, you either die as a company or you live long enough to become an advertising company.
Every company's an ad tech company.
And a fintech company.
Yeah.
And so every company ultimately does. I never imagined Netflix would do it because they were so against it for so many years. But now that they have capitulated, I know this is an axiom again. Every company is going to become an advertising company, just like the AI assistants are.
And you have a great tweet about how the future of AI is shaking out. Like, do you think most of these categories are winner take all, or do you think there's going to be like a plethora or like a group of winners?
I think almost in every category, unless there's a very strong network effect, there's going to be a few winners per category. We're already seeing that in the foundation model. I don't think it's going to be a monopolistic situation. I think there's going to be, that said, there's going to be multiple winners. That said, I think it's likely that the number one player in the category will capture 50 to 70% of the value. The number two captures 20 to 30% of the value. And then everyone else together captures 10%. So I think there'll be 3 to 4 companies, but there is importance to be number one or number two, because I think the rest of the players are.
And how do you, like today, like, you know, if our companies are extremely promiscuous, like we're constantly moving between the model providers and really looking at kind of quality price continuum and trying to and even there, we don't want to be like too overwhelming to one. But I could see if they like start memorizing the context more of what we're doing, that we're going to get a lot more locked in. Is that, like, you think, the ultimate strategy?
I think it depends on what the company's ultimate goal is. I do think there is a theory that the reason OpenAI dropped the price of GPT-5 so much is that they almost want to burn the boats, and they want to say, look, we are going to make enterprise almost a zero profit pool business over time. Yeah. And instead, we are going to basically make money off
you already saw some people move over from Anthropic. Exactly. Even if GPT-5 was, maybe it's 100% as good, maybe it was 120%, but maybe it was only 80% as good, but it's 5x cheaper, I'm going to likely at least try it out.
Exactly. And then the profit pool shifts. So your profit pool goes from enterprise to the consumer side, and then you have ads and subscriptions monetizing it. So I think that's an interesting question for me is there a profit pool in enterprise? And if so, is it at the foundation model layer, or is it the application layer where you're building agents and adding more value and so on? It might be that, through pricing strategy and so on, because Google and others have other things they can do. They're trying to almost raise the ground in some ways for these token-based models or token-based pricing strategies, and say, look, that's not going to be, we are signaling that this is going to be a zero profit pool thing. Anyone who tries to make sustainable profit of just selling tokens, any model, that's not going to be the case. We are going to systematically eradicate that profit pool. And that's what happened in some ways. I think in AdSense, I think that's the thing. As there is a saying that just commoditize your compliments. And so they're commoditizing their compliments by just saying, yep, that's complimentary. our core business is this. And
So the core
it's
business
interesting
is
strategy.
B2C,
It's
essentially.
B2C. It's B2C,
Interesting.
exactly.
Yeah.
Anthropic is an interesting, I mean, Anthropic, I bet a chunk of the revenue comes from enterprise today, obviously, from Cursor and
Cursor,
some
yeah. I mean, they've probably have they're
and
going to have
Cloud
$1 billion
Code.
from Cursor or something, some crazy number like
Exactly.
that.
So the
Yeah.
question is for them is going to be how they
Yeah.
adapt to
Replit.
this. Replit, exactly. All of the V0, Replit, Cursor, all of them use
Yeah. Yeah.
Sonnet today.
Bolt.new, right? All that stuff, right? They're all coming. But I mean, I know we're investors in many of those companies, and a lot of them are becoming a lot more promiscuous. They're using
In fact, it's a great thing for them because now
they're
they're no
using some of
longer
these
dependent on them.
they're even using some of these open source models as well.
They have to, because otherwise you're negative or very low gross margins. So this then changes the axis of competition. It's brilliant. I mean, it's such a, I think historians are going to look back, business historians, at this period from 23 to 30 probably, when everything, just the wave of innovation and the business model innovation is so incredible. I mean, chat GPT was such a, I mean, masterstroke in retrospect, because it just showed OpenAI that they don't just need to be a developer focused company. In fact, I always
Yeah.
say now, any infrastructure company I invest in, I want the company to not just be a defense company building deep tech, defensive company building deep tech, moving slowly, getting enterprise customers, but have the opportunity to play offense, build a consumer brand. Vercel, great example, right? I'm an investor in Vercel.
Yeah.
And what a brilliant thing. They just went up the stack and made V0. So I want an infrastructure company that has the potential to do that, like an OpenAI or a Vercel, and build
Yeah.
that.
We're also investors in Vercel. And I mean, and one of the thing of all these companies, if you think of Vercel, Perplexity, Replit, Bolt.new, Cursor, et cetera, like they all have these like incredible founders who are they're not just like super technical, and they're all super technical, but they've got like this dual thing. They're also super go to market, super good at marketing, and mass marketing. Like Perplexity CEO, he's like a master at mass marketing, at like getting into the news cycles, at finding a way in. Obviously, Sam Altman is like
buying
the
Chrome for
master
35
at
billion.
it. Yeah,
Buying, it's a great marketing stroke. Exactly right. And so I think the nature of companies is changing, just like the nature of people that companies want is changing. People want, anyway, we can talk about that more. But I think it's a what a time to be alive.
How are what people want changing?
I think there was an article in the New York Times that talked about how CS grads are having tough time finding jobs, and I think I got a degree in CS, and I feel like 30 years ago, getting a degree in CS, you could just do the coursework, you could do a couple of internships, and yeah, you get a job. But today, what companies are looking for is full stack thinkers. I mean, that's the
Yep.
word. I really someone who is not just an engineer, but can be a product person, can think about business problems, can go up and down the stack, is proactive, can really be a battle over time, and they are looking for people like that, more T-shaped people who can go deep into something but also have a broad perspective on things. And I think just doing the coursework and doing an internship or two is not going to be enough today. You've got to build a product thinking mindset as an engineer. So you've got to really be a full stack, and then you've got to be AI native. I think companies are being weirdly specific in some ways, and many of these are almost unreasonable. But that's why they're trying to find people who have truly built with AI and lived their lives with AI and have built their own personal AI stack and AI agents and so on. So showing over the last 2 or 3 years, they were never sitting back and doing coursework. They were embracing this wave. They were doing stuff proactively, etc. So proactivity, being able to be on the cutting edge of things and be able to be full stack thinker. So it's hard. I mean, I feel a mid career professional, they're all having these moments where they are looking at themselves in the mirror and saying, hey, should I just take a step back and go be an IC now and relearn some of these skills, because what I learned so far, what made me succeed in the last 10-15 years, is not what's going to get me to succeed in the next 10 to 15 years.
But I mean, you mentioned proactive. I mean, in some ways, like if someone was just proactive, like, and really, somewhat smart and just proactive, like that puts you in like the 99th point something percentile. Like that's all I need. I mean, it's so rare to find someone who's actually proactive.
Exactly. Agency, right? I mean, I always say the two things you have to look for in any role is problem solving, ability to just problem solve, just be fearless about problem solving, and then high agency, someone
Yeah.
who you don't have to like micromanage. They just come to you with problems,
But
with
those skills have
solutions.
always been rare. Like it's not like it's not, and it's not that easy
But
just
the
to
AI
like
now makes it
learn how to be
easier to
proactive.
amplify those skills. That's right. And proactivity, you can now have more ways to measure. Okay, this amazing tool has existed for 2.5 years now. What have you done with it? Have
Yeah.
you been proactive about using it? Earlier, there were harder things. Now you can actually say, "Tell me about 5 tools you've used outside of Chat GPT
Yeah,
in your AI
totally.
stack.
Show me what you built.
Show me what you build." Exactly, exactly.
No, you have been somewhat vocal about disagreeing with like Paul Graham, Brian Chesky about this founder mode essay. Where do you kind of disagree with them?
uh, I think first of all, it's a great framing that Paul Graham came up with around founder mode. I think founders look. I think hands-on leadership is very important. It's a double-edged sword. I think whether it helps or hurts a company depends on the context and the stage of the company. So where does it help? It's obviously very critical, as you know, as a multi-time founder in the early stages of the company. So you're setting the tone. You're basically being super involved in every single hire, every single decision, every single product decision. And so, I mean, when I look at Google, for example, I was there early, and Larry and Sergey, even till about few hundred people were setting the tone. Every single decision of the company was they were basically super involved in it. That level of involvement is needed. And the other time it's needed is when the company is going to when the company is either tackling a high stakes problem or even an existential threat to it. And I think that's when or when something is not going well, something meaningful and meaty, the company is not going well. Those are the times. So I remember when Google Plus was launched, Zuck used to have these sessions called lockdown. Whenever he perceived that Facebook was under some kind of threat, he would basically light a sign outside his office that said lockdown. It would light up, and it was almost a beacon for all the engineers of the company to congregate. And he would give a speech saying, for the next X weeks, there was no time frame till we have built all the things we need to build and shipped all the things we need to ship and gotten to a place where there's no longer an existential threat. The whole company is in lockdown. No
Oh,
one's
that's
going to work on
amazing.
anything
I've never
except
heard
this.
that anecdote. That's super
Yeah.
cool.
So when Google Plus launched, even though ultimately it didn't prove an existential
Yeah,
threat,
yeah.
he became the PM. He's like, here's the things you're going to build, and here's the teams that are going to build it. And I was on ads, but we still contributed. I mean, we had our ads teams, but even those engineers jumped on, and for I think it was 6 or 8 weeks, no one did anything except these features and working directly with Zuck, and he was the PM, and that's hands on. Now, I think on the contrary, if you start taking every if you're hands on in everything, it basically signals to your leadership that you don't have confidence in them and you can't delegate. And then many times you get involved in things where you're not the best in the room at that. So I think you have to understand what your superpower is. Zuck
Yeah.
today, till today, I think is still very, very. I think again, I think the AI moment is again a lockdown moment for him, where he's, as you can see, taken ownership fully. But when I was there, I mean, a lot of the ads and sales stuff, Sheryl Sandberg would lead, and she was excellent at it, and he would defer it to her and her team, and periodically he would get involved, but it was more we would pull on him versus he would push. And I think you've got to have a partner like that. I think part of it is having trust and having a partner whose superpower is complementary to your own.
And you've talked a lot about these number twos that are complementary. Why else is that relationship so important?
Every company I've been at, now that I think about it, has had someone like that. Larry and Sergey had Eric, Mark Zuckerberg had Sheryl Sandberg, Jack Dorsey had Keith Rabois, and at DoorDash, Tony Zhu had Christopher Payne. And so each of them, I think, on one side gave them a superpower, because the reality is every person has a superpower. Even though they are T-shaped, they can do a lot
Mhm.
of things. They have a superpower, and they have something they really want to do on a day-to-day basis. This helps them. This person,
And
especially if
clearly for Zuck, it's product.
it's engineering, it's really the vision of the company. But then there's an infinite number of things that need to run in order for that product to sustain, including monetization, the business side, regulations, all of those things. So you need somebody who has an owner mindset, even at that senior level, someone who can get into the details, someone you trust. And interestingly, I think Zuck has said this a couple of times, someone you'd be willing to work for if the roles are reversed. In fact,
Mm.
you could argue that Eric was the CEO of the company, actually,
Yeah.
and Larry and Sergey theoretically dotted line into Eric or worked for Eric, even though they were triumvirate. And I think Zuck has said the same thing. So you almost need a person who's equal. And I've seen the same at Coinbase with Brian Armstrong and Emily Choi. They're so complementary. Brian really runs product engineering, and Emily runs, huge chunk of the company. And I suspect that all of these folks, it works that there is mutual respect. There's mutual respect, and they're almost like peers. And the reason is they have complementary superpowers.
One of the things,
Yeah.
so I have a theory about this. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts, or what you think about my theory. So, usually there's like a number one and a number two, and the number two is very complementary to the number one. They have very different strengths than the number one. Sometimes what happens is the number one retires or whatever, and then the number two takes over the company. And I think this is universally bad. Like, because the number two is complementary for a reason. So they wouldn't, like, that particular company needs the number one strengths as number one. So if you think of Sheryl Sandberg,
You can
like,
see Steve Ballmer and
yeah,
Gates, right?
exactly. Like Sheryl Sandberg I think she could run many companies, including like JP Morgan, but I don't think she should have run Meta. Like, I don't think she would have been the great number one for Meta, because she was there as the complementary kind of person. And again, so this is my crazy theory. I'd love to know what you think of it.
I actually think Cheryl can run any company she wants, including Meta. But
Yeah,
I think
she probably could.
She would need a complementary product person who's just as good as her that she respects. And I think knowing her, she would hire somebody like that. I think you're right.
Like, if you think of Tim Cook was complementary to Jobs. Now, obviously, he's done an incredible job as CEO, but
he needs.
I don't know. I still feel like Apple would have been better off if it had like more of the product person as the leader, and someone who's super operational as the number two.
Look, I think Uber has proved it wrong so far, at least, where Dara, has had some amazing product people as his.
Good point. Yeah.
So I think it can work.
In any case, it's hard to succeed a founder in any scenario, right? So usually it doesn't work.
Iconic companies, I mean, they are one of one. Each of them is one of one.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good point. Now, I'd love to ask you a question about boards. You're on a bunch of boards. I've been in many boards in my life, including many I've run. And I would say pretty much all of the board meetings I've ever been to, including all the ones I've run, have been subpar, have not been that great. In the end, like, I've not done a good job of running them. Like, what have you learned about not only being a good board member, but having actually a good board meeting?
So to be a good member, first of all, you need to care about the company and the industry. You need to care. In other words, I don't think once you join the board of a company where you don't care about the problem they're solving, the customers they have, and that you're not willing to be proactive about learning about this industry and sitting to this. So I think, for example, I love Procter & Gamble as a customer, but if Procter & Gamble were ever to invite me to join the board, I don't think I'd be a good board member, because I honestly don't care about that problem specifically to be proactive with what they're facing.
Yeah.
I always advise people who call me, hey, should I join this board? Do you really care? Have you ever in your life, or are you going to be proactive about thinking about this company and the problem? So that's one. And I think this is a good one for you to test prospective board members. Are they at all? Do they care about this? What have they shown? Just like we say.
Yeah. And by the way, if you're a B2C company, like, do they already love your product? So they're already into it, right?
The product. Exactly. Yeah. If you're X and you go and find someone who's never used X, probably might not be a good executive or a board member.
Correct.
The second thing you learn is that as a board member, you have 2 or 3 jobs. One is governance, making sure the company is running well. The second is fiduciary, where you are a representative of the shareholders. The shareholders in some ways have put you into the seat, and you are kind of the nominal boss of the CEO and the management team. And the third is strategic. And so the second and third are the most interesting ones. First, you've got to hold the CEO accountable, and you've got to make sure the CEO is the right person in the seat. But the last one is the thing that you do most often, which is strategic. You've got to be asking the questions not around day-to-day operations and financials, what's happening this quarter or this year, but is the company set up in light of the competitive environment and dynamics and everything that's going on to thrive over the next few years? So what are the challenges around the corner that the company might or might not be looking at? And so when I first joined boards about 16, 17 years ago, I was very directive in my feedback. Let's do this. And I quickly realized that doesn't make sense, because the executive management team is running the company, not me. So my goal, and ultimately I'm going to hold them accountable, they have to make the decision. So I always now ask questions in a Socratic way. Have you thought about this? Have you considered this competitor? So Socratic questions that really still frame the dialogue and discussion.
Yeah.
So the right
Rather
board
than
meetings,
like having an opinion or something.
having an opinion, and you try to gently nudge and make sure they've considered enough things. So the right board meeting, in my opinion, is a 3 to 4 hour meeting for public companies or later stage companies. I think for younger companies, it's 2 hours is more than enough. 3 to 4 hour meeting where the first hour you start with an executive session where the CEO gives CEO and the board meet up. The CEO talks about what's on their mind, fresh off, like good and bad, what's going well, what's not going well. Give some, that's about 30, 45 minutes. Then the CFO and the leadership team joins the board meeting. And then we talk about the financials, which are obviously important, how typically it happens around the quarterly earnings, so how the company has been doing, what the quarter looks like, what the year looks like, all of that. So you get done with that planning for the year. So that's about 1.5 hours. After that, you spend 2 hours, two topics, 1 hour each or 45 minutes each, which are strategic topics. One can be product centric, one can be business centric, could be channel partnerships, could be a new product, whatever the case is. And those are the topics that there's a lot of time spent ahead of time discussing what those topics should be. And typically, I like one product and one business, typically led by a product team. And then you want more, you also get to see other folks in the boardroom. You want to make sure, obviously, the execs are there, but you also want to see the next level, and you have the discussion. So really, those are things that pre-reads are sent out a little bit ahead, but really the goal is to not present, but as much as discuss and really be open with the board around some of the challenges, problems you're facing, and have a discussion around this. And really, the board needs to really come much more than any session. Those 2 sessions really with a point of view around what questions to ask, how to challenge folks, how to bring the diverse set of experiences the board members have to each of these discussions. And some board members will be more actively engaged in the product one, some will be more actively engaged in the business one. But you want, again, if you feel your board members can't actively engage in one or the other, you don't have enough, then you probably need different set of board members. And that's
One
why
interesting thing that is the only company I know that does this is Meta. I'm sure there are others where they actually have 2 boards. They have a board of directors and they have a product board. Some of the people are on both, like Drew Houston or Charlie Songhurst are on both the product board and the board of the traditional board of directors, but they're different and they have different goals and different objectives. And I assume they have different topics that they dive into. And the CEO is going to get different things out of them. Have you heard of other companies that have something like this?
I've never heard of any other company doing it. That's pretty impressive that they have 2 different boards. I mean, I didn't know this, to be honest, till you mentioned this. I'm pretty impressed with that. I think most companies, getting the board together, with once a quarter, and then there's all the committee meetings and so on, is good enough, or at least it's hard enough, I should say. So running 2 boards, obviously there's overhead on the company. You want to really make sure it's worth it. But I mean, I'm sure it's worked well for them with those kinds of folks in there. But yeah, there's product and business. And then finally, you wrap up with feedback from the board on the meeting, on everything else you've seen and heard for that day with the CEO initially. And then you have an exec session without the CEO at the end. So it's like cleanly, many of the boards I'm on now, we've gotten to the structure where CEO plus board, thoughts, unfiltered thoughts. CFO comes in, CFO managing comes in, talks about the quarter of the year. 2 or 3 maybe, but 2 is better. 45-minute sessions, maybe 3, sometimes 30-minute sessions, and then you end up again. Everyone leaves, CEO and board, and then the board alone giving feedback to the lead independent or the lead director to summarize and communicate back to the CEO and the management team.
Now, you recently launched your fund Marathon, but you've been an angel investor in you're super prolific. You've been in hundreds and hundreds of really interesting companies. How has the venture landscape changed over the last couple of decades?
I think 15 years ago or 18 years ago when I started doing investing, it was very clear. There were swim lanes that were very clear. You raised a friends and family round. Then you raised a round. Back then there were no seed investors. You raised a round from early stage VCs. Then you went to later stage growth VCs, etc. Now there ain't no any swim. There ain't no any swim lanes. I mean, everyone swims in everyone else's lane. In fact, if you think you're swim lanes, you're living in a different world.
Totally.
I've seen pre-IPO quote unquote firms do seed rounds, and I've seen seed firms do Series D rounds, lead Series D rounds. So I think there is no swim lanes, and you've got to really, as an investor, you've got to. I think it can be very chaotic, and there can be a lot of.
And the strategy is changing constantly as an investor. You can't be oh, I have this strategy and stick to it. You have to be very fluid.
But it's also very dangerous because strategy drift means that you end up doing many different things. And so you've got to understand where your true north is. What is the core of things that stays constant through all this change. Because if you don't have a core, that basically means that you have no strategy at all. And I think that is challenging. I think it's hard to. There has to be something that is consistent across all your investments. Something. It doesn't need to be the stage. Doesn't need to be. It has to be something. I think it could be the domain. Could be something. I think everyone needs something, because otherwise you're just rudderless. You're just capital chasing the best deal, which I think is hard. I think it's possible, but I think it's a hard way to. In fact, I always look back at my angel. I'll think of vintages. I have vintage years where I've done 30, 40, 50 investments, not as many as how many you're doing. But when I did more than 30, 40, 50, I'm like, I could barely remember the names of the companies in those
totally.
years. You're doing one a week. And then there were years when I did 5 investments, and I really remember them because I was proactive with those years, those vintage years. Some of them died, some of them did well, but I just had a deeper relationship with those companies, and I felt more satisfied with those. But anyway, I think, the things, the speed at which things are moving and capital is being deployed, it's almost like capital is just being deployed, and it's hard, at least from the outside. So when you're in, you kind of see there's a method to the madness. But the other thing you realize is that you've got to really make sure you build your own conviction around a company. You cannot outsource conviction to someone else. I think what it means is that because everyone is playing their own game. And so if, for example, you work with you say, oh, multi-stage platform fund is leading a round, I should invest. Guess what? You better know that if they're leading a seed round, their goal from that seed round could be very, very different than your goal as a seed investor potentially. And so you've got to be very, very careful and thoughtful. And so you've got to build your own conviction. Only then maybe you learn. So I've many times made mistakes of, firm X is leading the round.
Yeah.
So, okay, I was on the fence.
Sequoia's in, I should be in or something.
Literally, you go from saying a no to the deal or a no to a yes. And I would be like, hang on. And then you look back saying, I was a no.
Right.
Why? Just because someone is leading the deal.
I've made that mistake many times in my life. Yeah.
Right. So you only make that mistake and you learn from it. So, yeah.
Now, what you recently raised a fund. How was that process? Like, what did you learn from the process of raising the fund and, pitching LPs and stuff?
The biggest surprise I'm having just being a venture investor is the importance of patience. I think most LPs are, they basically, many times when they meet you, unlike a venture firm where, they move fast. LPs are thoughtful. They move at a certain pace. And many times they want to build a relationship for fund 2 or fund 3.
Yeah.
So I think it's you've got to just be, it's almost like an enterprise sales funnel where you have folks, and then some folks could go for fund 1, but the vast majority of folks you meet want to see a certain strategy and deployment and all of that stuff, the team working together before they say they'll invest. And this is true even on the investing side. I've realized, I think as an operator, I always felt able to launch product fast, see impact, move fast. So you're used to certain cycles, reasonably 1 or 2 years, even months now, weeks. With venture capital, as you know, oh my God, when your whole life is around making decisions that don't pan out for years, and increasingly, I don't use any markups and so on as any markers of success. It's all about whether or not the company achieves a liquidity event.
And that could be 10 years later or more.
Which is 10 years. I invested in the seed round of Figma in 2012. It took 13 years, which is why our firm is Marathon. It is a marathon. It takes 13 years from seed to IPO. If you're lucky, some companies.
If you're lucky,
years.
What are there things you look for in founders that most other investors overlook? Like, what's the money ball?
The biggest one I look for is, can I see these founders operate outside of my pitch? In other words, I'm very, very nervous about only getting to see founders during a pitch they make for me, because I feel all behaviors are hidden, amplified, etc., and you don't really see the true nature of the founder. So I really try to not meet the founder. If the only time I'm able to meet a founder is when they're pitching me, I feel that is a dangerous time to invest, because you don't really.
But any good founder, if they're meeting you, knows that they're pitching, even if it's not during a quote unquote pitch, right?
Exactly. So what you do is you try to become their confidant. And so my goal is to try to build a multi-month relationship with the founder ahead of their pitch and one of the best ways you can do that, if you can make an introduction to a customer for them, a real
customer, a potential employee, even another investor.
Yeah. Those are the two things. Even before you invest, that just instantly breaks down the wall And then actually, if you make an introduction to a potential customer, you can sit in that customer meeting. I
Totally,
didn't
yeah.
realize that recently. You have the privilege to actually sit in and listen to how they
Yeah, we
pitch.
just did that. I just did that in a company where I introduced them to Anthropic, and then I could see, okay, well, how is Anthropic actually interested in this product? Like, are they wanting to buy it? And obviously, so that would also increase my conviction in the company. But and then you're adding value and
And when you
all the
make an
above.
introduction to an employee, the same thing. You can ask the employee, how's it to work at this company if they
Yeah,
do the
yeah.
job, and what is the experience like? And so you get two very different perspectives. So trying to really not just get my one perspective, so trying to really have other. And that's what been the difference. As an operator angel, you don't have much time, but as a venture investor, you have more time to think about and do these things. I mean, that's why I'm always impressed that you're able to do both, or in you yourself, as an operator and also as an investor, because just time is the key thing. The more companies you invest in, the less time you have per company.
For sure. Yeah. Now you've actually talked recently about like why people in leadership roles should try to like maybe move back toward being more individual contributors. I can see how like that would seem like for many people a step backwards in their career. Like, how do you engage with them when you're giving people career advice?
I think good news is it started out by a couple of the folks who work for me proactively saying they are exploring this. And over the last few months, I have seen ex-colleagues, ex-friends and friends, sorry, proactively move from leadership, which is manager or manager roles, to IC roles, mostly at AI native companies. I think the key twist is at AI native companies. I think they were
Yeah.
prior to that not working at AI companies. And it, like you said, it does seem counterintuitive to start with, but it's a right career move. Why? Because most AI native companies, they want to make sure the person can do the work, and they are generally suspicious of people who are leaders, who've been leaders and managers
Yep.
without necessarily doing the work. And so by signaling the eagerness or ability to do the IC work and doing the IC work, you actually, but you have leadership experience. You, I think, have a really good chance of becoming a leader again at this company if you want to, if you can do the IC work. Because
Also, like managing people is not like that's almost the opposite of doing good work. Like
exactly,
you're
if you
starting to
want to,
see there was this ratio where like I was seeing many companies where it'd be like one manager to 5 people or something, and now you're seeing one manager to
20,
20, 25,
right?
30 people or something.
Exactly. Span of control has increased dramatically. And I mean, this is the first time in history where probably we're getting to the point where leverage from technology is greater than leverage from people.
Yeah.
You used to get, as a manager, leverage from managing people. Now you can manage AI agents and you can manage technology, do the work of
Yeah,
people.
you
And
get more
so
vendors. You
you
get good
get
at
better vendors.
selecting other vendors to help you, and that's like it's better than having a person.
Exactly. And as you know, I think for managing people and running companies yourself, managing people is not all that is touted to be. And so the more
It
time
sucks.
you spend managing
It's a
people,
lot of work. Yeah.
you actually realize that, you know what, if I can do IC work, if I can be
Yeah.
impactful, if I can be productive, I can get paid well, you know what, I can be an IC. I can be an IC and I can do great work. Leverage is what is missing, and leverage is what is now unlocked through technology and AI.
There's this relationship that between like product engineering, data science, design. It seems like it's changing a lot. Like, how do you see those relationships evolving?
I think the actual job of each of the product engineering and data science folks is still the same. So product is still the what and the why, owning that obviously in a collaborative way with engineering and data science. Engineering does the how. And then data science is I call it the insight engine, which is always not just building dashboards, but coming up with new interesting insights around pricing, around markets, around hypothesis testing, et cetera, hypothesis review testing. Those roles are stay the same. What is changing dramatically is how many and what that ratio should be within a team of product to engineering to data science. In
Yep.
other words, and how many people who should do those roles. For example, I have companies now that say engineering is no longer the bottleneck because they can move much faster. Product is a bottleneck. So instead of having 1 p.m. to 5 or 6 engineers, I'm going to have 1 p.m. to 2 engineers.
Yeah.
In fact, there
Also,
is a
the
very
product people, they can vibe code. They can
they
get
can
things
write code, and
done.
that
They
PM
can they
also
can
does
they can
data
use
science.
vendors and outsource things,
Correct.
etc. They can spin up a contractor if they need to.
Exactly. The role of the product managers now goes far beyond. I feel some of them have been put into service as designers. Some of them
Yeah.
have been put into service as data scientists. So you almost have to do
Right.
all of them.
You get in a bolt on new. You can just like spit it up or something
You
or
can split it up.
whatever.
Yeah, you can do AI prototypes super quickly. And then you have one designer shared across multiple teams that's making sure that you're not doing something crazy
Yeah.
and but you're staying within the design systems they have. Even front-end engineering can be done with these prototyping
Yeah.
tools now.
And of
So
course, there are those engineers who kind of act as product people too. So maybe it's like hard to know. There's a tension
exactly.
of
So
how to
that's
know
a
like
skill,
what
right?
you
If you're a
need.
college student, the skill you want people to build is comfort with taking any of those roles. I feel product engineering designer, I
Yeah.
shouldn't say fully interchangeable. I think there's back-end engineers who do complex system
Yeah,
stuff,
for sure.
which are
Yeah.
not. But front-end engineering, design, product, and data science, I think everyone should try to get all four of those skills, at least figure out how to be passable at two or three of them and have a superpower in one of them. Because I do think that's the example when you're talking about college students and so on, early career folks. People are looking for people who can do multiple things. We used to all look for full stack engineers back in the day, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
new
Yeah.
icon. But now it's full stack thinkers, product people who are comfortable just thinking about the design, but also comfortable interviewing customers, doing insights. So got to be comfortable
Yeah.
doing
People
those.
more. Yeah. And they've got to be AI native.
Got to be AI native. They've got to be able to work with AI tools exactly from day one.
Cool. All right. A couple of personal questions we ask all of our guests. What is a conspiracy theory you believe?
I don't really buy into conspiracy theories in the traditional sense, but I do think that there are systemic blind spots in how people interpret events. For example, the way the media and public initially fully dismissed the potential origin of COVID-19, right? People are like, oh, it wasn't made in a lab. It wasn't a lab leak. It wasn't just about science. I think it was I think a lot of it was politics, groupthink, and people weren't intellectually curious to try to understand what the reason is that.
What's your theory about why that happened? Like, why did so many
I
people
think it
kind of
became a
dismiss,
political thing.
which
I
kind of
think
was somewhat the obvious thing, right?
it became a political thing to express your opinions, and it was very quickly, if you expressed there's almost a strong peer pressure. If you expressed a dissenting opinion, you'd be quickly shut down or canceled in some way. And so it almost was I think a sign of the times in some way, you could say. And only now that we are actually seeing real evidence with, I think, a bunch of the health authorities have released that it's probably a lab leak. And I think that it was a knee-jerk thing, partly by I don't know whether it was a government knee-jerk thing, but then everyone felt compelled, and if you weren't, you're going to be canceled because you're questioning the.
Yeah.
So that uncomfortable, it was uncomfortable. Um, so that's, I think, a recurring pattern you see. I think knee-jerk dismissal of uncomfortable ideas, and so I've always tried to say, I think any consensus narrative, probably almost any consensus narrative, is probably should be questioned because there's it just become too consensus. So.
Now, before I get to our last question, I noticed that behind you there's a for people who can see this, but for the audio, there's a Settlers of Catan box behind you. Are you a big Settlers fan?
Settlers and Carcassonne,
Yeah,
two
okay.
favorite board games. Settlers
Okay,
and
I
Carcassonne.
love both of those as well. Why do you like them so much?
I think they are strategic, but they're also fun. They kind of allow you to think long term within the context of a game, so you're not just thinking transactionally each play of the game. Similar to poker in some ways, you're kind of
Yep.
building your hand over time. So but it's a fun game, and it's also something that young kids can pick up. So it's a
Yep.
great family game.
I
You can
played with my wife and kids last night. I played Settlers. We had a great time.
It's a great thing. Kids love it. Adults love it. You can play it at different levels. Right? There are movies you can experience, like Inside Out. You can
Yep.
experience at 5 different levels. It's one of those games you can experience at 5 different levels. Young kids, with adults, with colleagues. I mean, many companies have Settlers of Catan nights and so on that
Yeah,
are
yeah,
great.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. When we were in person, we would always be doing them.
Well, next time
Um,
we meet in person, we should play Settlers of Catan, my
that
friend.
would be awesome. I would love to do that. Our last question we ask all of our guests: what conventional wisdom or advice do you think is generally bad advice?
I think this is, I think, increasingly not conventional though, but I think there was a obsession with work-life balance. And I think early in your career, when building something transformative, it's a luxury. Balance is a luxury you can't afford. I think the reality is that building a great company and mastering a craft requires intense, maniacal focus. And I think people, you see every single person who achieved extraordinary outcomes don't just clock out at 5 p.m. I mean, they basically work. I mean, you probably have companies, and I have companies. The AI companies are 996, 9
Yep.
a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week in the office. And some of them are 997. Actually, it's called 007. There's like new midnight to midnight, 7 days a week. I think some of those things are challenging, but that's what it takes. And now you need to have, I think a better analogy is you have intense periods like that, and then you have basically renewal periods, and then
Yeah.
you have intense periods in your renewal periods. And I think, but early in your career, especially, I think to build something extraordinary, you can't do it without extreme amount of focus and cutting out some of the balance stuff.
Yeah. Okay. I don't. I think that is. I think what you're saying is almost conventional advice now, right? For like, for at least for people in the
For
startup
our
team.
100,000 tech Twitter friends, basically.
Yeah, exactly. All right, this has been, thank you, Gokul, for joining us on World of DaaS. I follow you at Gokul R on X. I definitely encourage our listeners to engage you there. This has been awesome and a ton of fun. I knew it was going to be great, but this has been awesome and a ton of fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Auren, for having me.
Thanks for listening. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to World of DaaS wherever you consume your podcasts, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and more. And please help us get discovered by leaving a review. And check out worldofdaas.com. That's worldofdaas.com. And of course, connect with me on Twitter at Auren. That's AUREN. Would absolutely love to hear from you.